The following is from my book, Sacred Sites in North Star Country, Places in Greater New York State That Changed the World. The area of America's Northeast and Southern Ontario, Canada, has played a disproportionate role in influencing and shaping the world for the good. Much of what we hold dear originated from this area. I call it North Star Country after Frederick Douglass's newspaper, the North Star, and for all the freedom seekers that were guided by the North Star to find freedom here before the Civil War. Folklorist Carl Carmer called the route of the Erie Canal a psychic highway, saying it is a broad psychic highway, a thoroughfare of the occult, east of Albany to west of Buffalo. In no other area in the Western Hemisphere have so many evidences of transcending mortal living been manifest. Unless you are of indigenous descent, a pantheist or a pagan, you're not used to thinking that a place, a space on the earth can influence us in profound ways, but it can. Long ago in upstate New York, there was a time of violence, war, blood feuds, and unspeakable acts. Then came a great prophet called the Peacemaker. He ended the killing and warfare and brought peace and united the 5 tribes, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, forming the Haudenosaunee, or what many call the Iroquois Nation. He consecrated the Union by planting a tree of peace, a white pine tree on the shores of Onondaga Lake in Syracuse, New York. He also gave his people the Great Law of Peace, a spiritual document that provided a code of ethics and a format for living. The Great Law of Peace was a bold and innovative concept. It established participatory democracy where everyone had a say. It was a form of federalism that included the separation of powers, delineated the power between the tribes. It created a matrilineal system that gave enormous power to women. Many years later, the Great Law of Peace would inspire America's founders and serve as a model for establishing American democracy. On October 21, 1988, the Senate acknowledged the influence that the Haudenosaunee had in shaping American democracy by passing Concurrent Resolution 331. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Henry Stanton were married in 1840 in a ceremony where the word "to obey" was omitted. And for their honeymoon, they went to London for the World Anti-Slavery Conference of 1840, when Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and other women from America were not allowed to take part in the convention and were forced to sit in the back. Strong bonds and a network of women that will become the women's movement was created. Spiritualism began on March 31st, 1848, when Katie and Margaret Fox in Hydesville, New York, located between Syracuse and Rochester, said that they had communicated with a murdered shoe peddler. The news that the Fox sisters had communicated with spirits spread rapidly. Shortly, the sisters would be conducting seances, acting as a medium between the living and the dead around the country. Mediumship empowered women by allowing them to head congregations, unheard of at the time. It also married spirituality with reform. Anne Browd, in her book Radical Spirits, notes that the popularity of spiritualism within the women's movement, saying that while many women's advocates were spiritualists, not all were, but all spiritualists were women's advocates. Others saw spiritualism as a means to be guided by spirit world to make a better earth. In other words, spirit-led reform. The Oneida community was a former perfectionist utopian community. It was a bold and radical social experiment in the mid-19th century that challenged gender roles, child rearing, and monogamous marriage. Members practiced complex marriage where everyone was free to have sex with others. Men practiced male continence in the form of birth control. While Utica Psychiatric was criticized for its restraining device for violent patients, it was at the forefront of trying to help the mentally ill. Its first director, Uriah Brigham, helped found what will become the American Psychiatric Association. He created and was the first editor of what will become the American Journal of Psychiatry. Brigham thought that mental illness was the result of a bad environment. Because of this, patients had spacious rooms, good nutrition, as well as physical exercise and mental stimulus. They even had their own literary journal, the Opal. Harriet Tubman was the most famous conductor on the Underground Railroad. Known as the Moses of her people, she ferried more freedom seekers to freedom than anyone else. After the Civil War, she became active in women's rights and built a home for the aged on her property. The land influenced the hearts and minds of those in North Star country that improve the human condition. Within the land are powerful land memories and fields of consciousness. When we think or do something at the same location, we create an impression or imprint that clings to the land. The more we think or do the same thing there, the stronger the imprint gets, and it will also begin to influence us. Carl Jung called these imprints archetypes, and they were part of the collective unconscious that was buried in the earth. Jung believed that the earth contained the collective memory of humankind since the dawn of existence. He felt that it exerted a powerful influence upon us. As an example, Jung told how Australian Aborigines believed that a land cannot be conquered by an invader because the ancestral memories of the inhabitants will rise up from the earth and take over the conqueror. Democracy was born with the Haudenosaunee at least 500 to 1,000 years ago, and since then all sorts of initiatives and reform movements have taken place in North Star country. All this activity has created and strengthened land memories there. I imagine the imprints in North Star country have been shaping the hearts and minds of reformers, radicals, and rebels for thousands and thousands of years. Fields of consciousness emanate what Hindu mystics call pure consciousness. It is divine consciousness, or pure love. It is the consciousness we would associate with our highest purpose, with altruism and self-sacrifice. It is this consciousness that nourished the souls of many of the great beings in North Star country. You are looking at a diagram of a field of consciousness. On the left-hand side, you can see the field, or the area exuding consciousness. This is where the divine love, or pure consciousness, emanates from. It is a potent force. It is intoxicating and can well up deep feelings of love and compassion within you. On the right-hand side, there is an originator, where the spirit lines, or what I call lines of consciousness, begin from. Decades ago, when I was taught dowsing, we called them ley lines in the States. But that terminology has become controversial, so I don't refer to them as such. When spirit lines pass over the field of consciousness, they absorb the pure consciousness, or divine love. The spirit lines are now imbued with pure consciousness and will carry that divine love to distant corners of the world. They will interact with the consciousness they come in contact with, which usually is not good. Sadly, fields and spirit lines are often tainted by human intentions and actions. There are thousands of fields in North Star country. I encourage you to visit North Star country and pray, meditate, or do ceremony on a field of consciousness. They are a potent source of spiritual nutrition that will nourish your soul and raise your consciousness. More importantly, your actions will help fortify the field so that spirit lines will carry a stronger dose of divine love to distant corners, making a better world. It will also help clean up tainted fields. Check my book and blog for updates on some of the fields I have recently visited as a keeper. The Peacemaker Sanctuary at Onondaga Lake is generally very powerful, containing numerous energy vortices and geospirals and much more. It is a must visit.